test is in 4 parts: Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
You will hear two students talking about libraries. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hi there, Tim. You look tired.
Hi, Zara. I am tired. Well, it is SWAT-vac after all.
SWAT-vac? Ah, yes, of course. Exam period. Don't remind me. I'm pretty exhausted myself. I'm finding it very difficult to study. It's so noisy where I live. I can't concentrate with all that traffic outside. I definitely need to find a quieter place to study.
Me too. Actually, I've just downloaded some information about the best libraries in the city. Take a look at this. It's the Bailey Library.
The Bailey Library? Isn't that the really old library on Parkville campus?
Yeah, that's the one. It's the oldest in the city. And it says here that it's really popular with students.
Popular with students? That means it's noisy and crowded.
Okay. I see what you mean. But we could try to get there early to make sure we get good seats and a large desk to work at. It's open from 8:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock in the evening, Mondays to Fridays.
10. That's very early. I study much better after midnight. Just look at the size of my folder here. I've got so much to get through. Basically, I need to be in the library 24/7 to get all my revision done. Now, if the Bailey is that popular, it must be open at weekends.
Yes, of course it is. It opens at 11 o'clock, in fact, and it closes at 5 p.m.
Great. Not exactly what I call ideal for late-night study. Count me out.
Okay. Here's another one. The Brown Library.
Yeah. I think I've gone past it a couple of times. It's close to Stratton Street, right?
Yes, Stratton Street and Royal Parade.
Royal Parade? Well, that's convenient for me. My apartment's just a few minutes' walk from there. When's it open?
Well, it says here it opens at 7 in the morning, and you'll be pleased to hear that it closes well after midnight, 2 a.m. in fact. And we can go there any day of the week.
That sounds ideal.
Oh, wait a minute. We can't use it. It's only open to biomedical students.
Biomedical students only? Great. Just when we thought we'd found the perfect place to study.
Oh, wait a minute. This one sounds good. The RMIT Library.
The RMIT Library? I've never heard of it. Where is it?
It's on Swan Street, near the Central Bus Station.
Swan Street. Ah, yes, I know where that is. It's a really long street, though. Do you have a number?
Yes, number 360 Swan Street. The full address is Level 5, Building 8, 360 Swan Street.
Okay. I think we'd need to get the bus there, but that's not a problem. So when's it open?
It's open from 10 till midnight on weekdays.
And what about weekends?
10 in the morning, but it closes at 6 o'clock on Saturdays and Sundays. But listen, it says here it has excellent computer and internet facilities. I like the sound of that.
Me too. In fact, I like the sound of it so much, I think I'll take advantage of their excellent computer facilities right here and now.
And how exactly are you going to do that? Your laptop isn't working.
I know. So can I borrow yours?
Now you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen to the rest of the conversation and answer questions 6 to 10.
OK, here's the RMIT Library website. So we want the bookings page. OK, first of all, you need to log on to Book It.
Book it?
Yeah, that's it, Book It.
Okay. Now it's asking me for my student ID and my password.
OK, so just type in your student number.
I think I can just about remember it.
And now your password.
Okay.
So next, you need to choose the resource type you want to book.
That's easy. A PC.
So now what you need to do is click on Location.
Location. Okay. Now it's giving me a floor plan. It looks like I've got a choice of 18 computers.
Great. So click on one of the PCs.
I'm choosing this one. It's right next to the window. PC number 4 to be exact. So what do I do now?
So now you have to choose the date of booking. So when do you want to book it for?
Let's go for tomorrow. That's Friday, June 6th.
And just click.
I just have. So why isn't it working?
You've got to go into View Options.
Ah, it's working now. Friday, June 6th.
OK, so now you need to choose a time.
Let's go for late afternoon. 5 p.m.
Right, let's do it.
Great. It says booking completed and there's my name on the booking schedule. Result.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a man talking to teenagers about archery.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
OK, can you gather round again? Is everyone here? No, we're missing 2. Ah, here they come now. Right, the next activity is the last one before lunch. So, archery. And I can tell you this activity is the favourite of a lot of our visitors. It's great fun and very relaxing. It can also be competitive. I think we should get the idea, have some practice, and then introduce a bit of competition, if you're up for it. Good idea? I'm going to start with the basics. Archery is the practice, or art, some might say, of using a bow to propel an arrow. Archery was initially used for hunting and combat, an important aspect of warfare in the distant past. Today, archery is largely a recreational activity and sport. The very first bows and arrows, and we're going back thousands of years, were very simple. The bow was straight, but bent into a curve when the string was pulled back. The further back the string was drawn, the greater the tension, and the faster and further the arrow flew. Later, bows were designed to be curved. This meant there was an existing inbuilt tension, and the archer, that's you in a few minutes, exerted less energy drawing back the string. When curved bows were not in use, they were unstrung. That means the string was taken off, so that the bow was not left in a state of tension. I think it's interesting that almost every culture had bows and arrows at some point during their development. Of course, we've all seen Native Americans with bows and arrows in the movies, but the very oldest bows originate from Scandinavia and Northern Europe. The use of bows and arrows died out with the invention of firearms, though I must point out that the earliest gunners were far less efficient than an expert archer. Archery as a recreational activity started to become popular not long after that. Anyway, that's enough history. Do go online, though, if you want to know more. Right, the practical side. First of all, safety. Now, you might have played with bows and arrows when you were kids, but these bows and arrows aren't toys. They're not dangerous if used properly and safely, but they certainly can be dangerous if used carelessly. So everyone, please stand here on this side of the line until I say otherwise. Nobody walks towards the targets until I say it's safe to do so. When I say so, everyone puts down their bow, and then we can all go into the target area. Each of you will fire one at a time. I don't want to see anyone load their bow when it's not their turn. When you've fired, you put your bow down and wait until it's your turn again. Is that clear?
Now you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the talk and answer questions 16 to 20.
Let's take a look at the equipment. The bows are fairly heavy. You might be surprised. We'll spend a moment practicing holding the bow properly before we load one up. I'm holding it now, in the position in which you'll hold it. The drawstring is here, and again you might be surprised at the tension. You'll need to practice drawing back the string. Just above the middle of the bow, here, is the sight. You look through this as you would with a rifle. Using a bow and arrow without a sight is perfectly possible. Most master archers do this, but having one will certainly help you to start off with. Now I'll put the bow down and show you an arrow. The shafts of our arrows are wooden, but fiberglass arrow shafts are now common too. Traditionally, as I'm sure you'll know, the fletching at the top of the arrow, not the tip end of the arrow, was made of feathers. We have some arrows with feather fletching, but we also have some with what we call vanes. That means the fletching is made of solid plastic. All of you have a quiver with 6 arrows in it. You should tie the strap of the quiver around your waist, like this. As I've said, you take an arrow from your quiver when I say so, when it's your turn and not before. Oh, I nearly forgot. Protection. Everyone has a chest guard and hand guard, like those that I'm wearing. I'll show you how to put the chest guard on in a moment. And a bracer. The bracer's a smaller arm pad that protects the inside of your arm from the string. For those of you in a t-shirt today, that's important. But the bracer will also stop the string catching on the sleeve of a jumper or jacket. Right, so before we pick up the bows, let's have a look at these chest guards.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a conversation about waste between a tutor and a student. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 23. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 21 to 23.
Well, we've been looking at the issue of waste this term, and as you know, it's a huge area to research. Now, Hannah, just to recap on our last session, we identified a range of sources of waste. Can we just run through these very briefly before we make a start?
Yes, I've got a note of them here. We've got waste from industry, commerce, quarrying and construction, and then, of course, there's household bins and litter.
Great. Now, you were going to focus on industrial waste, weren't you? How's the research going?
Well, actually, I decided to go with household waste in the end and focus on food. I've been looking at exactly what we throw out and how much. Now, maybe this won't come as much of a surprise to you, but I was really amazed at just how much food we throw away in the UK. We throw away over 7 million tonnes of food every single year. 7.2 million to be exact.
That's quite right. In the latest survey, it's been estimated that we're wasting 1/3 of the food we buy.
Exactly. That's like 1 in every 3 bags of food shopping going straight into the bin. I think the worst thing about it is that more than half of this is food we could actually have eaten. So to give you some examples, things like unopened pots of yoghurt, whole chickens. Yes, people actually throw out whole chickens.
Now you have some time to look at questions 24 to 30. Now listen to the rest of the conversation and answer questions 24 to 30.
Now, have you got any figures to support this? It's important to include these in your final assignment.
Yes, I've got a note of them somewhere. Yes, here they are. Let's start with yoghurts. Now, 1.3 million of them go straight in the bin and 5,500 whole chickens. Oh, and I've got another example. Bread. An amazing 7 million slices of bread are completely wasted too.
OK, you've got some solid figures there. And don't forget to explore the reasons why we throw out food we haven't even opened. One interesting point worth making here is that, basically, we often completely forget about what we've bought. So we stick the box of eggs in the fridge and our packets of biscuits at the back of the cupboard, and they just lie there, completely unused. And on the subject of eggs, you might be shocked to learn that we throw away 0.7 million of them every single day, and the same amount of packets of biscuits.
I think that people need to think more about how they are storing and using the food they buy.
That's a good point. What do you think is the problem there? Do we all need to change our attitude to food?
Definitely. Part of the problem is that we've come to expect our food to look uniform and, well, perfect. So, we want our apples to be green all over and to be a certain shape and size. This means the farmers, and then we as consumers, end up throwing away perfectly good food just because it has a blemish or a mark. What's wrong with a green apple that has some red colour on it too? What's wrong with a tomato that has a slightly strange shape? But that kind of attitude may explain why there is so much waste. In fact, these are exactly the foods we waste most of. We throw out far more of those than we do bakery items like cakes and biscuits. And just to give you some idea of quantities, we're throwing out 5.1 million whole potatoes, 4.4 million whole apples, and 2.8 million whole tomatoes on a daily basis. And then there are the sell-by and use-by dates. They encourage us to throw away food long before it goes off.
Thanks, Hannah. You've highlighted an interesting point, that waste is very much a social issue. OK, let's leave it there. We can look at the issue of initiatives to reduce waste next.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a woman giving a lecture about the positive effects of laughter. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning, everyone. I do hope you didn't get too wet getting here this morning. The subject for my talk, I think we could all do with some to take our minds off this atrocious weather, is laughter. The laughter I want to look at is specifically related to psychological therapy and the treatment of physiological disorders, something we've been looking at over the last week or so. Now, when we start talking about psychological therapy, laughter isn't something that immediately springs to mind. Therapy is a serious business, and it's generally approached with an appropriate degree of seriousness. After all, people seek treatment and enter therapy for serious reasons. They're often at critical junctures in their lives, and they need professional help. The question is, how is it that laughter can be such a vital part of the therapy process? It's normally identified with humour, and thus generally deemed appropriate only in lighter, more frivolous circumstances, when it's acceptable to find a situation funny. Perhaps this is why so many people in the medical world feel that laughter's frequently misunderstood and undervalued as a cathartic, healing process. Now, humour certainly is one trigger for laughter, but it isn't the only trigger. If we take as a starting point the fact that laughter is a physical process that releases emotional pain, it follows that stress, anxiety, and tension may prompt the same response. Psychologists frequently point out that humans don't laugh because they're happy. They're happy because they laugh. Once we accept that laughter and pain are related, we are less likely to be shocked when people laugh in all sorts of painful, even tragic situations. Cathartic psychotherapy utilizes laughter as an essential medium for healing emotional pain. It's specific to the release of anger, fear, and boredom. When people laugh, they free themselves of painful feelings. The amount of pain the body releases during a single burst of laughter is immeasurable, but we know that the body will keep discharging pain cathartically until there's no longer a need. The only obstacle to the process is the self-constraint we learn to impose on ourselves during our early years. We're taught the virtues of self-control from infancy, and any loss of that control during an emotional outpouring is discomforting. We fail to realize that when we lose control, we actually gain in many other ways. Our cultural preference for processing feelings cognitively, instead of feeling them physically, maintains and prolongs emotional distress. Patients who have had upbringings during which feelings were suppressed may have quashed their ability to laugh, cry, and become angry. Clinicians can help individuals regain these cathartic processes, enabling them to release deep-rooted emotions that may be an obstacle to happiness. Only now has research begun to validate the notion that emotions are stored in the body rather than the mind. Recently developed cathartic techniques allow practitioners to teach patients how to access their hidden emotions and release them. The more catharsis the patient experiences, the more rapidly he or she progresses through the healing process. Laughter is probably the least threatening cathartic process, at least to the person expressing the laughter, and so it has an essential role. It's often a stepping stone to other forms of emotional release, like crying or showing rage. So why, you might ask, has the mental health community been so slow to accept laughter as a healing tool? Well, for reasons I've already outlined. Like any expression of the true self, laughter is radical and revolutionary, and laughing at what is seemingly misfortune upsets conformity. We in the medical professions must challenge the antiquated view that adult laughter is silly and inappropriate. We have to ensure that patients don't reject the healing power of their laughter, in the fear that others will see them as making light of their issues. Traditionally, mental health practitioners have viewed laughter as a way of hiding painful emotion. In contrast, cathartic psychotherapy understands that laughter releases emotion. Through laughter, feelings erupt from within into the outside world. If people suppress laughter, they also stifle the release of pain. The catharsis of laughter doesn't change people's circumstances, but it does change the way people relate to those circumstances. It enables them to take a different view, a view from which terrible misfortune can seem so much more bearable. This allows people to remember, to feel, and to explore without fearing that they'll be trapped by what they can't control. Life's most tragic events often have an essence of absurdity, and this can be the trigger point for laughter. Some people deal with emotional pain instinctively and come along to therapy already laughing and crying. There are many others, however, that need assistance.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.